attending our news briefing today. My name is Ann Moore Sparks. I'm the Community Engagement and Business Partner Specialist for Danville Public Schools. And I would like for these gentlemen to introduce themselves as well.
I am Billy Cheney, Director of Safety for the Danville Public Schools.
Stan Jones, Superintendent, Danville Public Schools.
Captain Keith Thompson, North Area Commander.
Thank you. Thank you for attending this joint media briefing between Danville Public Schools and the Danville Police Department announcing an active shooter drill scheduled for this Friday, October the 11th, 2019 at Galileo High School. The drill will begin at 2:00 p.m. This is also a full professional development day for our teachers, so there will be no students on campus during the drill. Additional details are outlined in the news release that you received when you walked in. At this time, if anyone would have additional comments, please do so.
First, I'll just mention a couple things. First of all, it is a drill, so I want to emphasize that. But I always like to say that crisis doesn't make an appointment. So the public gets concerned sometimes when we start talking about this type of a scenario. But it's important for us to know that our capabilities in terms of responding. It's also important for us to know how we're going to engage with our first responders if there is such an incident that occurs in our city. So I think it's wise and prudent in this day and age to do a crisis drill. And I want to thank our police department partners and my security staff for taking the lead on planning this. In my opinion, it's long overdue.
Like the press release says, there will be no live ammunition at the school. It will only be simuation, actually blank rounds being utilized to simulate the active shooter. Any officer response, there will be no ammunition on their persons or their vehicles for safety reasons.
At this time, we will open it up to any questions that the media may have.
First off, just what kind of prompted this and led to this time and coming up this week?
I'm going to let Billy Cheney answer that because he's really orchestrated this over the last 12 months. And we recently had Natalie Hammond here from Sandy Hook. She was injured in that tragedy. And she said something that really struck me, that you never think it's going to happen to you, right? So, Billy, if you don't mind.
As Dr. Jones stated, it's time. I came in this job over a year ago, and one of my objectives was to bring everybody together. Everybody has training and knows how they would respond, but we thought we should bring everybody together so the school system can see how the police responds, the police knows what the school system is capable of, and vice versa. This so all agencies on the same page.
All right, and then one last question from me. Maybe police would be better to answer this one, but when it comes to actually training in scenarios, how effective is that to actually, when you see something in training and you go through it, how effective is that when something actually happens, when that kicks in? How does that experience help somebody who goes through that?
When conducting training, it's the best place. No one's perfect. People mess up. It's a great time to find those errors, things that we could do better than doing it in a real life scenario when lives actually do matter. So the training is very important. We just had a tabletop exercise last month, which highlighted a couple of issues that we do have, not only the response to schools, but response as law enforcement, fire, EMS, that we're working out and we're adjusting. And hopefully these trainings continue so that we can continue to get better and better to serve our community.
And one question, Captain Thompson, obviously during a real situation, you would have, kids in the school, you would have teachers, it would be perhaps maybe a little more chaotic than this situation is going to be, given that this is kind of pre-planned and staged. So how are you guys going to make this as real as possible, even though there won't be some of the elements there that would be there in a real situation, so that if a real situation ever does occur, this training is actually applicable?
So this will be one of our first steps in our training. We actually have role players that are going to play as students We're gonna have, so we don't affect our police response to our day-to-day calls. We actually have a shift that's coming in that's off-duty that'll help respond in that case. But trying to make it as realistic as possible, not letting them know too much information. That's probably one of the biggest keys, because you know what the scenario is, you can pre-plan all day. But like you said, when it's a live event, you have to act on the fly. Again, we've trained, the tabletop we talked about. We've adjusted some of our our procedures in responding to an active shooter and have had trainings on that inter-department. So that's continuing to help with that stage. So when a live scenario does happen, they've already had the training, something close to it, and they can act versus sitting there in a shell shock and be able to respond effectively, again, to save the lives of the victims.
Colter, I'd like to add on that, if you don't mind. We'll be filming this scenario, and we believe that'll be a great opportunity to train and to look at best practices and areas of opportunity as well.
About how long do you expect the drill to last, and how long will the barricades be up?
So the barricades we set up by our Public Works Department around 1 o'clock. The drill approximately 2. We're not gonna have a set time, a horn or anything go off to say it started. The actual simulation, the blank rounds will go off to actually start the scenario. Guessing, a couple hours. Depends on how the response is and, you know, what we need to, how fast we get to other personnel there to be able to clear things. So I'm looking about 4 o'clock, probably concluding, hopefully. 4:30, probably at the latest. Once we get the school fully cleared out from all civilians, then we'll call it index at that, or call the stop to the mission at that time.
And can you give like an estimate of about how many people are going to be participating?
You mean as role players or everybody?
As role players.
Probably around 100. And it's all Danville Public School employee volunteers.
Okay. So 100, that includes students.
No, there's no students. There's student.
No, I
role-
know those playing students is what I
Yes.
mean.
Yes,
Those playing students, somebody playing the gunman, and that's
yes.
okay.
We actually have an off-duty police officer that's going to be playing the gunman part.
Okay. All right.
But the rest will be done by the teachers that's at Galileo will perform their duties as teachers,
Okay.
and the rest will be student role players.
Okay.
And Dr. Jones, I wanted to ask, how important is it for faculty members to also be participating in this training alongside first responders?
It's critical. I mean, we live in an era now where, I grew up in an era where school shootings didn't exist. That's not the real world now. So we want to certainly do everything we can to make sure our faculty and staff are aware of what could happen and respond accordingly. We have crisis planning that we prepare for every year, but this gives us a chance to actually implement our responses in a real situation. Let me just say this kind of bluntly. Most school personnel don't know what the sound of a gunshot sounds like in a school. If you look at Columbine and you look at these other school shootings, there's sort of a disconnect. There's no reality because people don't know what it is. We want to make sure that we're trying to prevent a crisis during a crisis by preparing for a crisis, if that makes sense. And the way to do that is to practice and drill. So we're thrilled that our staff want to participate in it. It's critical to us that they do participate.
And another question I had was the location just chosen at random? Is there a specific reason for Galileo?
Great question, Kyle. Again, I'll go back to my initial statement. Crises don't make an appointment. So there's nothing significant about this particular school except that it's a school. And so we want to prepare for any school, and I would hope that any school division anywhere would take the same approach. So nothing particular about Galileo. It does have a lot of, it's in the center of town and very accessible. There may be other schools that are not as accessible, but certainly its location, I would think, would be beneficial to fire and EMS and as well as police as they respond. It can happen anywhere, and so we're planning this as if it can happen anywhere.
Lieutenant Thompson, will this drill be similar to what Dayton Police Department holds occasionally at W Towns Lee?
So this training coming up Friday actually expands on what we've done in our past active shooter drills. In the past, as law enforcement, we would do our training, active shooter, we would respond to the active shooter, and then we're done. This takes it actually to the whole next level, where that type of scenario, if done correctly, should last maybe 5-10 minutes tops. But then you have all the people that are injured. And that's what this drill is really about, is how police, fire, and EMS get together and team up to go inside this building while it's still not a totally safe building and get these people out to where they can actually get medical attention and save lives. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about.
Any other questions? You guys get what you needed? Yep. Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much for coming. We appreciate your support.